have a lot of people talking about Jesus. We may have a lot of people going to churches, but we don't have a lot of disciples because disciples don't act like that. It's not how disciples act. So a disciple is a student, is a follower. It is a devoted follower. It is someone who now gives themselves to follow a particular person. In this case, we're talking about being disciples of Jesus. So here are some leading Greek dictionaries, New Testament dictionaries, and I want you to see the definitions because the Greek word for learn is connected to the Greek word for disciple, and the same with the Hebrew words for learn and disciple. So one dictionary says this: one who engages in learning through instruction from another, pupil or apprentice. Let me read that again, the Greek word mathetes. One who engages in learning through instruction from another, pupil, apprentice. All right, let's look at another definition in this same dictionary. And this is the one that would apply even more now to the larger meaning of disciple. One who is rather constantly associated with someone who has a pedagogical reputation or a particular set of views. Disciple, adherent. So you're constantly associated with someone who has a teaching, mentoring reputation or a particular set of views. Translated then disciple or adherent. And that's how it's used frequently in the New Testament. So to be a disciple of Jesus, you are constantly associated with him. You are modeling your life after him. You are spending quality time with him. He's here on this earth, right? Going back 2,000 years. You're sitting at his feet. You're listening to him. You're learning from him. You're learning of him. You're learning from him. And now you're practicing what he's preaching. That's what a disciple does. It's not just an observer, a spectator. No, the disciple is a student seeking to emulate the life of his master or teacher. All right, let's look at another definition. So mathetes, follower, often a disciple who is a believer and close follower, though other less committed relationships are indicated. Pupil, student, one tutored, implying a closer relationship than mere information. So to be somebody's disciple, here, think of it like this. If you're just going to a church service and hearing somebody preach, you could hardly be called a disciple just by doing that unless you were absorbed with that teaching. You were caught up in that teaching. You were modeling yourself after that teacher. And the course of your life was to put those things into practice and to grow in those ways. All right, let's look at another definition. We've got a couple more for you, and then I want to read some rabbinic writings to you. Here's another. These are all authoritative, highly respected Greek New Testament dictionaries. Mathetes, a person who learns from another by instruction, whether formal or informal, disciple, pupil, with the quote, no pupil is greater than his teacher, but every pupil, when he has completed his training, will be like his teacher. Every pupil. So we are devoted pupils, devoted students of the master, teacher, Jesus, listening to his words, absorbing them in our lives, following his example, seeking to live as he lived. In other words, our whole life is caught up in being that and doing that. One more definition just to put up for you. I think I've got one more. Do I? So Talmid. Talmid is the Hebrew word for student. Now, here's what's really interesting. And I've got a screenshot for those watching from the Follwer website. I searched for the word Talmid. It only occurs once in the Bible. It's an interesting occurrence in Chronicles. It only occurs once in the entire Bible. And it is a meaning of student, learner, okay? And the root lamad is to study. Talmud is that which is studied. That's the basic, the main sources of rabbinic foundational literature, the Talmud. But notice this. In the Follwer website, where you can search basically a massive database of rabbinic literature, and a lot of it translated into English, otherwise in Hebrew and Aramaic, Talmud or related forms occur over 47,000 times. In other words, this is a major emphasis of early rabbinic Judaism, that you sit at the feet of your teacher, that you absorbed in studying the literature day and night, And in Rabbinic Judaism, the tremendous emphasis is on learning, but then this learning should cause you to live a certain way. So there's a famous tractate or book of the Mishnah called Pirkei Avot, Chapters of the Fathers or Ethics of the Fathers. And it starts off with the notion of Moses receiving an oral law on Mount Sinai. Of course, I differ with that very strongly, but this is foundational Rabbinic Judaism. Moses received the Torah at Sinai, transmitted it to Joshua, Joshua to the elders to the prophets to the men of the great assembly, which would be days of like Ezra and Nehemiah around then. They said three things. Be patient in the administration of justice. These were three of their famous sayings. Raise many disciples and make a fence around the Torah. So, Hamidu Talmidim Harbe, Vasusiag Torah. Raise many disciples and make a fence around the Torah. Make a fence around the Torah would mean if the law says you can't go over 60 miles an hour, they'll say don't go over 40 to make sure you don't even get close to doing it. But notice one of the key things that they said was raise up many disciples. All right, let's go down to the fourth verse. It's called the Mishnah within the Mishnah. Yosef ben Yozer, a man of Zereda, and Yosef ben Yochanan, a man of Jerusalem, received the oral tradition from them. So this is again from Shimon the righteous and Antigonos. Yosef ben Yozer used to say, "Let the house be a house of meeting for the sages, and sit in the very dust of their feet, and drink in their words with thirst." So this is the concept of being a disciple. You sit at the feet of your teacher, and you drink in the words. You drink them in. So it's an absorbing of what they're saying. It is your life is devoted to learning from them, and then putting these things into practice. And then the sixth verse or Mishnah, Yehoshua ben Parach and Nita the Arbalite received the oral tradition from them. Now again, I don't believe in the full transmission of oral tradition the rabbis do, but I'm just giving you insight in terms of these beliefs. Yehoshua ben Parach used to say, appoint for thyself a teacher, and acquire for thyself a companion, and judge all men with the scale weighted in his favor. So you are compassionate in your judgment of others, but get a teacher and acquire a companion. A companion is a study partner. I was listening to a rabbi the other day saying that he's had the same study partner the last 25 years. So weekly or daily, they've engaged in studying rabbinic texts. But again, it's a lifestyle of learning. And then one more section, chapter 6, verse 6, or chapter 6, Mishnah 6, to be precise. I want you to see, it's a long passage, but I want you to feel for the idea of how learning was considered to be transformative to the whole life. In other words, it was not just intellectual information. Greater is learning Torah than the priesthood and than royalty. For royalty is acquired by 30 stages and the priesthood by 24, but the Torah by 48 things. By study, attentive listening, proper speech, by an understanding heart, by an intelligent heart, by awe, by fear, by humility, by joy, by attending to the sages, by critical give and take with friends, by fine argumentation with friends, by clear thinking, by study of scripture, by study of Mishnah, by a minimum of sleep, by a minimum of chatter, by a minimum of pleasure, by a minimum of frivolity, by a minimum of preoccupation with worldly matters, by long suffering, by generosity, by faith in the sages, by acceptance of suffering, who recognizes learning of Torah is also required by one who recognizes his place, who rejoices in his portion, who makes offense about his words, who takes no credit for himself, who is loved, who loves God, who loves his fellow creatures, who loves righteous ways, who loves reproof, who loves uprightness, who keeps himself far from honors, who does not let his heart become swelled on account of his learning, who does not delight in giving legal decisions, who shares in the bearing of a burden with his colleague, who judges with the scales weighted in his favor, who leads him on to truth, who leads him on to peace, who composes himself at his study, who asks and answers, who listens to others and himself adds to his knowledge, who learns in order to teach, who learns in order to practice, who makes his teacher wiser, who is exact in what he has learned, and who says the thing in the name of him who said it. Thus you have learned, everyone who says the thing in the name of him who said it brings deliverance into the world, as it had said, Esther told the king in Mordecai's name. Okay, you say, wow, that was a lot. The point is, the idea is not just learning information, but taking in truth that transforms your life. How much more do we do this now as disciples, not just of a book or of a teaching, but of Yeshua, Jesus himself, that we are absorbed with his life. We are absorbed with following him. The purpose of our life is to know him and make him known. The purpose of our life is to be with him and be like him. Anyway, we're going to take a break from this for a moment.